The biggest crisis in Paralympic history. Cuts will severely curb the Rio Games. Organisers say next month's competition will go ahead, but on a smaller budget, at fewer venues. 10 countries might not even attend.
It does feel that they're being treated like second-class citizens. It's not what we wanted 4 years on from the most amazing Paralympics in London.
But there's Olympic joy for Team GB's Jade Jones, who kite kicks her way to gold again in the taekwondo.
Also tonight, a 3-year-old boy is killed by a dog in Essex. Police investigate and a woman is arrested.
A British man's detained in Dubai for promoting an Afghan children's charity online.
And Ratty's back as conservationists intervene to help a favourite of the riverbank.
This is the ITV Evening News with Alistair Stewart and Ranveer Singh.
Good evening. The Paralympic movement itself says it is the biggest blow in its 56-year history. Beset by a financial crisis in Brazil, compounded by low ticket sales, budgets have been slashed. The Games will go ahead next month, but at fewer venues with fewer staff.
The news that came in the last hour cast a cloud over the euphoria of the Olympic Games. And as Richard Pallow now reports, 10 countries have already said they might not now attend.
Take a look, what do you see?
What the world sees tonight is an embarrassment. The Paralympics, advertised as the greatest showcase for disability sport, suffering major cuts just a fortnight before it begins. In the depths of a recession, Brazil only just managed to pay for all of these facilities. But the sways of empty seats at the Olympics, and with a mere 12% of tickets sold for the Paralympics to follow, it has simply run out of money. And the reaction from International Paralympic Committee President Sir Philip Craven was blunt. He said, "Never before in the 56-year history of the Paralympic Games have we faced circumstances like this." London 2012 set a new benchmark for Paralympians. In contrast, just days before athletes start heading to Brazil, no travel grants at all have been paid. It threatened the participation of athletes and so the event itself. Even with the promises that they will now be funded, up to 10 countries may still not make it to Rio as a result.
What we're trying to focus on is in solving the problem, and at a given point, just being concerned doesn't help. We need to make sure we can make the payment, get the tickets and bring the people here.
The changes are numerous. A downsizing of the workforce with potential security implications, the closure of some venues, of various media centres, and cuts to transport services for both athletes and their teams.
It does feel that they're being treated like second-class citizens. I don't think that's what Rio intended, because they've got great swimming and athletic teams, lots of media coverage. There are countries that get Paralympic sport, but I think the pressure of getting the Olympics right has just meant they're sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Paralympics GB say its participation remains unaffected. A full 258-strong squad is heading to Brazil. But what they will find will be rather different to the experience of 4 years ago. Richard Pallow, ITV News.
And our sports editor, Steve Scott, joins us live from Rio. Richard just said rather different to what they'd expected. Are these cuts enough to save the Olympics?
Yes, Alistair, I think they are. They are going to go ahead, as we've been reporting. There will be compromise after compromise. But you're right, the big question is, what does this mean? What will the fallout do to the Paralympics going forward? And it is a difficult question. I mean, clearly Rio de Janeiro's overspent on the current games, but it's also struggled to sell the Paralympics to sponsors. And as Richard was reporting to the public, I mean, ticket sales are hovering at about 10%, but it is in the context of a big recession here. So it's early days, but I think we might look back at London and we might say they were the biggest, they were the best, they were the most ambitious. And in future, as a result of what's happened here, we may be looking in future at a more scaled down version of the Paralympics.
Indeed. Let's look back at the last 24 hours then. More success for Britain.
Yes, absolutely. A couple more medals. One of those a gold. Still keeps Team GB in second place in the medal table, just where it wants to be. I'll tell you what would really help to push away from China a little bit for Team GB, and that is a win in the women's hockey tonight. They are facing the current champions, the Netherlands, so if they did win tonight and win gold, it would be some achievement.
Another gold medal.
She may only be a touch over 5 foot, but Jade Jones now lives in the land of the giants, home to an elite club of British double Olympic champions.
Absolutely magnificent performance.
She more than lived up to her nickname, the Headhunter, by high-kicking her way to the defence of her title, making history for a second time at the age of just 23.
I don't think people realise, how hard it is, training every day, 6 hours a day, for 4 years, and mentally and physically, it's just so draining. So, it's all down to this one day. It's so nerve-wracking, but such a buzz at the same time. And when it pays off, it's just amazing.
Hockey's history girls can add to the many firsts they've already notched up here by beating the formidable Dutch in tonight's final. Their exploits have already exceeded expectations, but those close to the team say they believe they can beat the current champions. Tom Mayers is defender Sam Queck's boyfriend. He says she told him today they have gold and gold alone in their sights.
I've spoken to numerous ones of the girls since they got into the match. Not one of them said the word silver, not one of them said the word compromise, not one of them said party afterwards, nothing. They are just drilled and driven and fully believing they have, at worst, a very good chance.
One more spin round the bend.
There's only one man millions of people from all around the world would schedule their day around just to watch him at work, and even then for just 20 seconds. And there was something quite rare on show last night. Not a Usain Bolt gold, of course, nothing unusual about that, but that he was still straining, not ambling, when he crossed the finish line. Straining for all his life too, Team GB's Adam Jamili, furthest from the camera in the white vest. He missed bronze by the tiniest of margins, 0.003 of a second to be precise. Heartbreaking, yes, but his moment will come again. But for Bolt, it was his 8th and final Olympic individual sprint gold. He could complete a remarkable treble-treble later in the relay. With all the controversy clinging to athletics right now, the sport has a lot to thank Usain Bolt for. Without him, it would be in a very vulnerable place, and that's something it will have to face up to before too long. Steve Scott, ITV News, Rio de Janeiro.
Here, a 3-year-old boy has died after being attacked by a dog at a friend's house in Essex. Dexter Neal was rushed to hospital after being bitten yesterday afternoon but could not be saved. A 29-year-old woman is being held by the police, and the dog, thought to be an American bulldog, has been seized. From the scene, Duncan Golestani has the latest.
Dexter Neal was playing at the house of a family friend when he was attacked. The 3-year-old's screams heard down the street as he was mauled by a dog. Dexter's mum tried desperately to save her son, as did friends and neighbours. Those close by heard her crying, "My baby, it's bitten my baby."
When other people had taken over and the ambulance people had taken over, she was on the front garden. She was down her knees, she was crying, she was still covered in her child's blood. Everybody was trying to help her and trying to keep her calm and everything.
I was watching the Olympics and screaming, and you think, oh, it's summer holidays and the children are playing, and it was really only later that I realised what had just happened, and I'm just in shock. I'm just in shock.
Dexter was airlifted from the house but later died in hospital from his injuries. He was bitten by an American bulldog. It's not on the list of banned dogs, but with a rise in the number of attacks, there are once again calls to revise much criticised legislation.
The Dangerous Dogs Act, I think, had flaws in it from early on. I think that it's time that we looked at that and that we reviewed that and to see whether there's more that we could do to encourage responsible dog ownership and discourage people who are either ill-prepared for dog ownership or are getting dogs for the wrong reasons.
Throughout the day, flowers have been left for Dexter and his family, some by those who knew him, many more by strangers shocked to hear of the 3-year-old's death. In the last few minutes, the 29-year-old woman accused of allowing a dog to be kept dangerously out of control has been released on bail pending further inquiries. In the last 10 years, there has been a big rise in the number of people needing hospital treatment after dog attacks. Those most likely to be mauled are young children.
Duncan Golestani, many thanks.
A midwife has been suspended for 9 months after she failed to look after a baby properly and he later died. Joshua Titcombe was one of 11 babies to die after treatment from the Morecambe Bay NHS Trust over 9 years. Holly Parkinson was one of a number of midwives investigated after an inquest found staff missed chances to save him.
The Foreign Office tonight backed calls for an urgent ceasefire to get desperately needed aid to children and civilians in the Syrian city Aleppo. Last night we reported from inside a besieged hospital in the city treating many young victims of government airstrikes.
Well, tonight we have an update on their condition as the hospitals who treat them are struggling to cope. And a warning, Emma Murphy's report does contain images that you may find distressing.
They have injuries which would need care in specialist units in most countries. But this is how you recuperate when the hospital in your home is on the front line of a merciless battle. Yesterday we featured the children as they were taken into the emergency room among a group who'd just been hit by what we are told was a cluster bomb. This was Faisal. He's 5 and was hit in the face and body. His injuries were so bad we can't show you them in detail. Today, he is on a dirty mattress without professional care because the hospital is full. We now know this is his 7-year-old sister Kamar. She was with her brothers and has a badly damaged hand as well as cuts to her body. This is her other brother, 8-year-old Mohammed. He was operated on just a few hours ago, but now he's been taken home. His family have no medical training and they are having to monitor his head injury alone. The scene in this one room exemplifies what aid agencies and doctors are warning, that 35% of those being injured in Syria's war are children.
We're finding that children have urgent medical needs because of all the aerial bombardment, but we're not able to get them out of Aleppo to get them to the hospitals that they need to get to.
This is where the children were injured. The Russians insist they didn't drop cluster bombs, but this wreckage suggests otherwise. One of the children least injured shows a British aid volunteer where they'd been playing and picks up pieces of twisted metal and tail fin, which munitions experts tell us are from a cluster bomb. Russian bombers continue their mission in Syria, their stated aim to attack so-called Islamic State. Those in Aleppo would argue otherwise. The Russians say they are willing to help deliver a 48-hour ceasefire. It is something, but Syria and its children on every side of this conflict need more than brief respite. Emma Murphy, ITV News.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, detained in Dubai, the British man arrested for supporting a charity on Facebook, and
Joy for Jade. Friends and family back home celebrate as Flint's fighting talent wins gold at Rio. Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. The brother of a British man who's being held indefinitely by police in Dubai has told ITV News he wants the UK government to intervene. Scott Richards, a father of 2, was arrested after posting support for an Afghan children's charity on his Facebook page. But as Sejal Carrier reports, it's banned under the country's strict laws, and his family say he's being kept in harsh conditions.
Scott Richards may have thought sharing a charity post on his Facebook page was innocent enough, but it's landed him behind bars in Dubai. His brother, speaking from Sweden, is concerned about the conditions in which he's being held.
No access to the outdoors except for 10 minutes a day when he can get some sunshine. They have access to the phone. Apparently, I've just heard today that every 2 days he's able to make a call. They have to buy their own water, and they have to buy their own extra food. So, I mean, there's almost nothing provided, from what I understand, in terms of services, and everything was reliant on him able to get cash in. And I think he gets to change clothes just once a week.
The father of two shared this post by a US-based charity which works with refugees in Afghanistan, campaigning for money to buy blankets and tarpaulins for children living in a camp in Kabul. But he fell foul of Dubai's strict new laws, banning any promotion of charities based outside the country. He's now been held for 3 weeks without charge in a police cell, and a group which helps expats in the UAE say currently there's little prospect of him being released.
The first week was, of course, the hardest, but now, I mean, he's just concerned that this will go on indefinitely and he could be there for 6 to 12 months in this no man's land of just in detention without charge.
With British and Australian citizenship, Mr. Richards has been living and working in Dubai with his wife and 2 sons. His family now want both governments to intervene. The Foreign Office say they are aware of Mr. Richards' detention in Dubai, and as he was living there on his UK passport, they say they are providing assistance to both him and his family. Sejal Karia, ITV News at the Foreign Office.
A British man and an Australian woman have been arrested after the murder of a policeman on a beach in Bali. David Taylor, seen here being escorted by police in a hood, and Sarah Connor have not formally been named as suspects. Police say a smashed beer bottle and a surfboard were found near the scene, which they think were used in the attack.
And post office staff are to strike over cuts to jobs, services and pensions. Members of the Communication Workers Union voted in favour of action, but the post office says only 3% of branches will be affected.
Britain's endangered water voles are now back in the Yorkshire Dales for the first time in 50 years. A small number of the mammals are being reintroduced at Malham Tarn after the country's population was almost wiped out by mink and loss of habitat. Angus Walker saw the return of Ratty.
They may be one of Britain's most beautiful wild creatures, but the water vole is also our most endangered species. Their population numbers have plummeted. In some parts of the country, they've completely disappeared.
The water vole population has declined by about 90% from the rivers and streams where they were once found, and this is mainly because of mink farms releasing the mink for various reasons, and the habitat that they're usually found in becoming more fragmented.
These are some of the 100 water voles bred in captivity being reintroduced into the countryside for the first time. In 25 release pens, they're being taken to the banks of Malham Tarn in the Yorkshire Dales, Britain's highest freshwater lake, perfect conditions for their numbers to rise. The water voles will stay in these pens for about 5 days, and then the rangers will open the doors and they'll be free to venture off into the wild.
We've put some rafts out that the water voles will use as latrines, and once they've used those as latrines, it's a really good marker, an indicator that they've spread and made the Malham Tarn area their home.
This little creature has captured the public imagination ever since The Wind in the Willows was published over a century ago. Known as Ratty in the book and best friends with toad and otter, this latest tale from the riverbank should also have a happy ending for the water vole. Angus Walker, ITV News, the Yorkshire Dales.
And finally, we have, of course, been reporting all week on the incredible successes of the British athletes in Rio and also on the remarkable celebrations of their families and friends here back home.
And it was no different from the relatives of Jade Jones, who stayed up until the early hours to cheer her on to gold. From Flint, our sports correspondent Ian Payne reports.
A hotel somewhere in Flint, North Wales, around 2:30 a.m, but details are sketchy. Local girl Jade Jones has just won Taekwondo gold again.
2 goals. She's done it. She conquered it. She won it. She wanted it. She's a legend. That's what she wanted to be.
The Jade Jones Pavilion, or leisure centre, sometime later that day, and the family reassemble. Also up and about a lot earlier and more alert, her first coach, Martin Williams. He's known Jade, the smallest in this picture, since she was 8.
really proud for myself and for Taekwondo generally, for her, for all the students that do it. Some of the kids were there last night supporting.
Her full-on training sessions have been part of her life for many years, and today she shared photos of herself as she grew from little girl to double Olympic champion. 4 years ago she came home from London and the whole of Flint turned up, and like all gold medalists then, she was given a special landmark.
4 years ago the Royal Mail painted over 100 of their red post boxes gold. This is the one in Flint to celebrate Jade Jones' success at London 2012. But there are no plans to do the same thing this year.
So what do her cousins think they should do this time?
I think a gold statue of Jade in a Taekwondo game would be great.
What would you like to see them do this time?
The big fort by the train station.
What colour?
Gold.
The big foot. Yes, there really is a big foot at the railway station, which is quite appropriate for Taekwondo. Ian Payne, ITV News, Flint.
Unless it's at the end of a Jade Jones kick.
Yeah, you don't want that coming at you.
That is it for now. Tom Bradbury will be here with the news at 10.
But from everyone here, have a great evening.
Bye-bye.